Now, let's talk about RTI, because the coalition on the right to information, Ghana is urging Parliament to pass the Right to Information Act, a monumental bill that would reflect the country's 1992 constitution. Kojo Singh is speaking to a member of the coalition, Sami Obeng. Over to you, Kojo.
Now, some of the organizations that have been watching this process and pushing it forward, the Coalition on the Right to Information, the Media Coalition on the Right to Information, and Occupy Ghana have issued a statement dated today, Monday, where they are congratulating Parliament on the progress they've made so far, but are also drawing attention to two particular issues that they think Parliament needs to address as quickly as possible to make sure that the completion of this process of passing the bill into law is done in the interest of Ghanaians. But what are these two issues? I'm glad to be joined here by a member of Parliamentary Network Africa and also a member of the Media Coalition on the Right to Information, Sami Obeng. Sami, how nice to see you. Thanks for your time with us.
Nice to see you too, Kojo. Thank you.
Now, you're very concerned about these two particular items. Walk us through them very quickly.
Right. So prior to the end of last week, we had Parliament finishing with all 92 clauses of the Right to Information Bill in Parliament. Now, just at the tail end of it, there was a proposed amendment by the Honourable Member of Parliament for the Suhum constituency, Mr. Frederick Opariansa, who is essentially suggesting or asking Parliament to add a new clause to the bill, which would indicate that the implementation of the application process, towards getting information under the RTI law should be suspended until 12 months has elapsed from the passage of or accenting to the bill by His Excellency the President. Now, we in our statement are indicating that, well, there are many examples on our continent which had shown how asking for some time before the full rollout of such laws can cause some form of challenges. We have the examples that are coming from a country like Nigeria, where upon passage of their own Right to Information law, there was some time allowed, and it's basically thwarted the efforts, towards the implementation of the bill. So we're asking Parliament to hasten, slowly and be cautious about accepting this. We have also cited in our statement the 1962 example of the Insolvency Act, which, once it was passed, there was some time given for the minister to come back with, some provisions before it will be implemented. That act did not see the light of day until the early 2000s, when it was repealed and a new one replacing it. So there are examples to show that we need to be very careful about this. The second thing that we are raising attention to,
yes, if we can focus on this first one for a moment. You're asking Parliament to be cautious. How do you define the parameters of that? So if Parliament comes back and says, okay, yes, we're going to go ahead with the 1-year delay recommendation, but we were cautious in doing so, will that satisfy you?
Well, we made a few suggestions on what should be the parameters should Parliament go ahead with the 12-month issues. So we are saying that the 12 months should not just be 12 months before the full implementation. There should be clear indications in the Act on what should be done, say, in the first quarter, in the second quarter, in the third and fourth quarters, to ensure that by the time the fourth quarter ends, we'll be fully ready. Because if we leave it in a blanket manner, we may not be able to make some good progress on this. Now, we are citing the example of how such a thing was captured in the OSP, Act, Office of Special Prosecutor Act, where there were clear timelines which were given, for which reason we are seeing some progress really with the rollout of the Office of Special Prosecutor. And so we are referring Parliament's mind to that particular provision in a law that they themselves passed a few months ago. So they will be careful with what they are about doing. But it's also instructive to note that on Thursday, the Right Honourable Speaker made some very cogent remarks and made some very interesting rulings. First of all, he says that the legislature is meant to make laws. The executives are to implement the laws. So it is not in the mouth of the legislature to indicate whether the executives are ready for the implementation of the law or not. The executive are supposed to determine whether they have enough resources to implement the law or do not have it. And that is the very reason why he summoned the executive branch through the Attorney General to come to the House tomorrow to be able to give an indication of what the executive branch is thinking about Honourable Opariansa's proposed amendment.
Right. Now, you've talked about the fact that the Office of the Special Prosecutor Bill, when being passed into law, was done in a way that solved this problem that you are envisaging of the delay causing challenges. tell me specifically how the Office of Special Prosecutor law was written to avoid that problem.
Okay, so in the case of the Office of Special Prosecutor, the scenario that was set around that time is slightly different from the scenario here, but we could borrow, good lessons from that. So Office of Special Prosecutor was passed around November, of last 2 years, 2017. Now, around that time, it was budget period, and governments, because they wanted to roll it out in 2018, made indication for it in the 2018 budget, which was in Parliament at the time. Now, in this particular case, budget for 2019 is already in force. Government had not made provisions for the right to information law implementation in this year, 2019. Now, the Special Prosecutor Bill says that, okay, well, it will take some time to have the structure set up, to appoint the new SP, to appoint the deputy SPs, and to set up the infrastructure and all that, and even to get the LI to come into place. So there were, for example, a 60-day period from when all of the setup thing are done, by which time the LI should come to Parliament, for example. Now, you recall that Parliament or the executive branch flouted this 60-day provision, but because they felt the pressure of the fact that just after the 60 days, if you do not take care, some people may take this matter to court, they were forced to hasten with the process, which has caused us to have an Office of Special Prosecutor that is fully ready for rollout now. And we think that such examples should inform Parliament, because it's a House of Records. They rely heavily on best practices from their own procedures to be able to inform their decisions going forward.
So I guess the distinction here with the Office of Special Prosecutor law was that they gave 60 days. So is it the recommendation of the coalition that the time frame be simply shorter?
Well, on the OSP, the 60 days was in respect to, if I'm not mistaken, was in respect to the LI coming to Parliament. In this particular case, it's a new establishment. There's the need for the RTI Commission to be set up. There's the need for the appointment of an RTI Commissioner. All ministries, departments, and agencies are supposed to have information officers. And so it's a whole, infrastructure. So we are saying that, yes, 1 year could be a reasonable time, yes, but it should not just be 1 year left in a blanket manner. It should be 1 year which is stating that first quarter, bring the LI. Second quarter, make sure you appoint the RTI Commission and its commissioner. Third quarter, make sure you do X, Y, and Z, and fourth quarter, do this, so we can start the full rollout.
So put time frames on the specific achievables.
Precisely so.
All right, let's talk about the second concern of the coalition.
Yes, the second concern of the coalition is that, you see, while the entire process was ongoing, the coalition took a very proactive stance, which was that we were monitoring the bill every step of the way. So for us at Parliamentary Network Africa, as a civil society parliamentary monitoring organization, our role in all of this was to have our research officers stationed in Parliament every day that the House sat, so that every amendment that is made to the bill, we indicate it. So we have what we have shared with a lot of our media friends, which is called the amendments tracker, which is indicating all the cancellations, all of the additions, and all of that. Now, the technical team was established, which was made up of people from the Media Coalition, people from the RTI Coalition, CDD Ghana, Occupy Ghana, Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, and a lot of other organizations, which was essentially to review all of the amendments that had been made as at close of last week, and to see whether there are any provisions in the new law, because now, if it goes this way, that would be the law essentially, that will be problematic towards the full rollout of the law. And we noticed that Clause 13, the way it has been couched, there's been some amendments to Clause 13 from the original one, which was brought from the executive. But Clause 13 is essentially saying that if there is a deliberative process going on within a ministry, department, or agency, or an advice is being sought on a process that needs to go forward, once the deliberation is going on, you cannot seek information regarding that particular, issue in question. But we think that this deliberative process issue has been couched in a way that ministries, departments, agencies may construe that to, or misconstrue that to be in perpetuity. So every time you go, they'll say we are deliberating. Every time you go, they'll say we are deliberating. And if that goes on, what it means is that our right to information would be curtailed, and we would be worse off when the law comes into force than we would have been if the law was not. So we are only asking for an insertion into that same Clause 13 or Section 13 if it becomes an act, which would say that, which would kind of give a time frame within which this deliberative process must be concluded, after which the information must be made available. So it is very clear. So it's not discretionary.
Right now, in your statement, what you said was that perhaps a statement that suggests something to the effect that once the deliberation process is complete, then the information can be made available. So, for example, if it's a procurement process, once the procurement has been done, the process has been completed, then the information should be made available to the public. But would that apply in situations where it's not procurement, but it's anything else? Government deliberating on a bill. You see how long a bill can stay in Parliament. Are there not circumstances in which even if you insert that clause, you might find yourself unable to access information for decades?
Well, you see, we reckon, and our statement stated it, that the deliberative process is part of the wheels that allows any government, infrastructure to function, without which, it will bring government to a halt. There must be advice being sought. There must be deliberations. Things must happen so that people can take the right decisions. But immediately the decision is taken, and so let's say that matters relating to, let's use very recent examples, bus branding or Kelny GVG. In those two instances, if we go to the ministry responsible and they tell us that deliberation is still ongoing to even decide on who to give the contract to and all of that, fair deal. But once the contract is awarded, then we know that the provision is making clear that if we still come back to you and you tell us that deliberations are still ongoing, then you may be flouting a law. Because it has been indicated in black and white that when the deliberation is concluded, so we can go to the RTI commissioner and request for interpretation on that particular section and compel you to provide that particular information. So I think that